There is only one person on death row in South Dakota. Briley Piper, 22 years on death row. He was charged with the torture and murder of 19-year-old Chester Allan Poage alongside two other perpetrators, Elijah Page and Darrell Hoadley. On July 4, 1980, Chester Allan Poage was born in Norton County, Kansas. He was raised on a farm near outside Norton before making the 1994 move to Rapid City, South Dakota with his family. A few days after his parents' divorce petition was filed in 1996, his father decided he did not want to live anymore. Back in Norton at first, the family eventually relocated to Spearfish, South Dakota, while Poage attended college. Poage was a student at Northwest Kansas Technical School and had 1.5 years left to complete his communications technology degree when he passed away. Page, Piper, and Hoadley met up with Poage at his Spearfish house on the evening of March 12, 2000. They had gotten together to play video games as a group because they were all friends. At the time, Poage's mother and sister were on vacation in Florida, so the home was deserted. Eventually, the four of them departed the home and traveled to Page, Piper, and Hoadley's residence in Poage's Chevy Blazer. When Page entered, he pulled out a .22 caliber revolver that he had taken from Poage's house and told Poage to sit down. The three men intended to rob Poage's family house, and they did not want anyone to be a witness to the crime. Piper kicked Poage repeatedly until he was knocked out while he lay on the ground. After that, he was strapped to a chair with a cord. To stop Poage from moving, Piper placed a tire iron across his feet. As soon as Poage came to, he begged his assailants to let him go, but they refused. He was made to drink beer that was mixed with hydrochloric acid and crushed tablets. Then Page took his ATM card from him. So as they stood in front of Poage, they planned their scheme to assassinate him. Poage was coerced into his own car and driven about 7 miles to the isolated Black Hills forest of Higgins Gulch. He was thrown into deep snow after he was told to exit the car. Apart from his undershirt, shoes, and socks, he was completely naked. Poage was then led towards a small, chilly creek as it descended a hill. He was constantly attacked while on the walk until he was made to lie down in the creek, where he was then attacked once again. Page stabbed Poage in the neck with a knife when he was lying in the water. The three guys then made the decision to murder him. Poage asked to be allowed into his car so he could get warm. He claimed that he would rather bleed to death in the warmth than freeze to death outside. If Poage cleansed the blood from his body first, Piper would comply with the request. Piper, however, changed his mind as Poage cleansed himself, and the three men roughly dragged Poage back into the creek in an effort to drown him. After that, Poage was finally put to death by having rocks hurled at his head. According to Piper's legal argument, he was not involved in either the attempted drowning or the stabbings. Page said that he and Hoadley killed Poage by tossing a number of big stones on his head. Piper contends that as Poage was being killed, he had gone back to his car. Hoadley, according to Piper, hurled the last rock that killed Poage, but Piper was not present to see the murder firsthand at that moment. To help Hoadley drown Poage, Piper is said to have acknowledged to stepping on his neck. After that, Poage was allegedly stabbed twice. Both Page and Hoadley acknowledge that they both threw large rocks at Poage's head, and they both feel that this is what ultimately killed him. In the early hours of March 13, Poage was abandoned for dead in the creek after the beatings had started. Because they did not want him to be a witness to their house invasion, the men killed him. In Poage's car, Page, Piper, and Hoadley departed from the scene. They went back to his residence and took a number of things from there. His car, a stereo, and some clothing were all claimed by Page. The men then traveled to Hannibal, Missouri to see Piper's sister in the hopes that they may spend some time there. They returned to South Dakota after she wouldn't let them stay with her. They traveled to Rapid City, where they sold some of Poage's possessions and withdrew cash using his ATM card. Following this, the three guys dispersed and went their separate ways, with Piper choosing to go back home in Alaska. In Higgins Gulch on April 22, 2000, a woman discovered Poage's remains. The identity of the deceased guy was later confirmed by a forensic pathologist who identified the remains. His death was attributed to stab wounds and a blow to the head, according to the findings. Hoadley submitted a statement to police during an interview on April 25th in which he described his role in the murder. He admitted to the crime and provided the police with the identities of the others involved. After Page and Piper had left the state, warrants were issued for both of them. 3 days later, Page was apprehended in Texas by the police. In Alaska, Piper was located and detained on suspicion of first-degree murder. Page gave investigators a voluntary account of the circumstances surrounding Poage's murder. Moreover, Piper made a statement in which he discussed his role in the murder and torture of Poage. Both individuals were extradited to South Dakota and imprisoned in Lawrence County. Page and Piper admitted guilt to the charge of first-degree criminal murder and were found guilty. They were both given death sentences, but Hoadley was given a life term. Page was put to death on July 11, 2007 via lethal injection, while Piper is still waiting for execution. Briley Wayne Piper was raised in Anchorage, Alaska. He was born on March 20, 1980. He was detained when he was just 13 years old for reportedly grabbing a female, and then again detained for assault after robbing a classmate with a knife. According to the prosecution, Piper was the group leader and skilled at manipulating others. Piper, like Page, waived his right to a jury trial when he entered a guilty plea in January 2001. On January 19, 2001, Judge Warren Johnson gave him a death sentence. Piper appealed his conviction, and in 2009, the Supreme Court overturned the death sentence, arguing that a jury should decide his fate. The jury sentenced him to death in August 2011, with the sentence being upheld in 2019. Laramie, Wyoming is where Darrell Hoadley was born on November 5, 1979. He experienced violence from his mother and her male friends, just like Page and Piper did, and had a challenging childhood. He had a daughter and was a resident of Lead, South Dakota at the time of the murder. Hoadley did not give up his right to have a jury determine his sentence, in contrast to Page and Piper. At his trial, he entered a not guilty plea. He was spared execution after the jury was tied 8-4 in favor of life in prison. In 2001, Hoadley received a life sentence. He is still detained at the South Dakota prison. Elijah Page was born on December 1, 1981 in Titusville, Florida. He relocated to Kansas City, Missouri with his family when he was still a little child. According to reports, Page had a difficult upbringing. He and his family resided without heat or utilities in abandoned buildings. Also, when he was 2 years old, his mother allegedly essayed him. In exchange for giving up his right to have a jury decide his punishment, Page admitted culpability in Poage's death. He received a death sentence from Judge Warren Johnson on February 16, 2001. By August 2006, Page had instructed his counsel to halt all appeals and let him be put to death. He allegedly stated that he was sick of leading a condemned man's life. Page expedited his execution and waived all of his appeals. He was originally supposed to die on August 29, 2006. However, because of a technicality with the execution drugs, Governor Mike Rounds postponed the execution until at least July 1, 2007. On July 11th, Page was put to death by lethal injection at the South Dakota State Prison in Sioux Falls. He was the first person executed in South Dakota in more than 60 years and the first since the state resumed the death penalty in 1979. No one younger than Page has been executed in the United States since his execution, and at age 25, he was also the youngest person put to death in South Dakota in the modern era. He did not give a final statement. His last meal was steak, jalapeno peppers, onion rings, a salad, and ice cream. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.